We'll just wait another couple of minutes for some people to join.
Is Bartek going to be there? Who's going to be here today?
Bartek is not feeling well. I'm going to be emceeing today.
Okay.
Okay, I'm getting tired of waiting. So maybe we'll just get started. So welcome to Standard Library Working Group number 3. After a holiday hiatus, we have a couple of modules to look at today. We're going to start with the last encoding module that we didn't cover last time, YAML. And then we're going to look at the flags module. And then we'll look at file system module. And we'll see how far we get. Potentially even look at the hash module, but I suspect that file system, we're going to get very hung up in file system stuff. So yeah, I think the best way to do this is I will take notes and I will share my screen, and ideas will just walk through these APIs and see if there's any problems with them, try to identify issues. We'll take notes on these and hopefully we'll address them. This is part of a very long process to go through all of our standard library APIs and improve them with the help of a bit of reflection. So let me share my screen. And I am recording, right? Seems like it. Let me close some of these things and open up. How should we do this? I guess, how did Bartek do this? I guess we just go into the website. So we're going to look at the encoding module and the YAML module. So I believe we have covered all of this other stuff last time. It's been like a month or more since we last did this, so I'm a little foggy on what we did. But let's take a look at the YAML module. So YAML module is broken up into different parts. This is a re-exports file, and hopefully our documentation is going to work when I click on this. Seems okay. All right, so the YAML module has a parse function, parse all stringify, for creating YAML. So first question I have is, what's the difference between parse and parse all? Looks like parse all takes an iterator, a callback function. Same as parse, but understands multi-document sources, applies an iterator to each document if specified, or returns an array of documents.
I think that's because YAML can actually be split into multiple files. If you put, I believe it's dot 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 at the end or at the beginning, you can sort of combine multiple files into a single YAML thing. So I guess that makes sense.
Okay. I guess so. I'm not so familiar with YAML. I've never seen that, but okay, if you say so. I don't like the fact that the return type apparently changes based on, let's see, load all. So I don't like this unknown return type. Seems not so helpful. And I guess, sorry?
Well, you're parsing unknown data, right? So it makes sense to return unknown. It's the same what JSON.parse does. Also returns unknown.
True.
But iterator or an array, that seems like the wrong or the weirdest part of it.
Right. So I would kind of expect this to be an array of unknowns.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think this violates our style guide. We have two optionals at the end, and one of them is an option bag. The iterator should be inside of the option bag.
Yeah.
Right. Parse all.
Yeah, I think this one just generally needs more documentation to what it actually does, because I don't understand. And this callback function signature isn't being exported. Parse options isn't being exported.
Parse options is exported, right?
Is it?
Yeah, like on the top, export type parse options.
Let's see if we can see that here. We see parse options.
Okay. But loader state options isn't. Yeah, nice. I think this shouldn't be an alias if you can't get to the actual like options. I don't think it should be an alias.
Yeah, let's have a look at what the callback function looks like in the source code here.
Also, this references a YAML exception error, but that's not exported.
YAML exception exported. Let me try to pull up this loader. Loader. And where's the callback? CB function takes a document of unknown type and returns nothing. Load all. This seems to be the more robust version of parse all. Yeah, I really hate this. I mean, I know TypeScript allows this, but we should actually add something like this to our style guide that says like no conditional return types.
Yeah.
It's just too confusing, right? I mean, just return an array of unknowns.
I think it's okay if like you're returning objects in both cases and like you just happen to have like one extra argument on the object or something, but if you turn two completely separate types, I don't think it makes sense.
Okay, so we have some extra things. So going back kind of to the index here, we have some more things to export where we want to move this iterator function into this options object. And we wanted to take a look at the options object. It's really too bad that view this in the documentation here. So this comes from loader state options, which comes from loader.
Just something little about the callback function type. Maybe it should be written out as callback and no shortcuts, no short abbreviations.
Yeah, callback instead of CB. Sure.
Also, this is such a simple signature. Doesn't make sense to even have an alias. Can it just be inlined? It's only used once.
This loader state options?
No, the
callback function.
Callback.
Right.
And in general, it seems like the loader and parsing stuff is calling, well, the parsing functions are calling the loader and nothing else. Maybe they can be renamed and just basically merged.
Yeah, it seems like this can be kind of flattened. I don't see a reason why this is all broken up like this.
I know this is a little maybe slightly off topic, but I would expect these methods to have more or less the same signature as JSON parse and JSON stringify. Now, yeah.
Sorry, I kind of want to. I don't know how to make my thing exit full screen. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to try to pull up my terminal so I can browse the code a little bit more easily, because I don't know how to use this website. Okay. CD encoding, CD YAML. Okay. YAML, is that too small for you guys to see, or can you? YAML,
nope, it's fine.
Loader state.
I can read it.
Right. So on this, let me pull the main functions here. So this is basically loader state options is the parse options. It's got a legacy value. Seems like not. I'm guessing that's something to do with legacy YAML. Like maybe there's an earlier version of YAML. Hopefully that doesn't correspond to a legacy interface in our own system, because otherwise I would want to remove it. Listener, not clear what listener does. So I would want some docs for listener. This is parse options. Presumably you get called on every element in the YAML file. A string to be used with the file path. So a file name for warnings, I guess. A schema definition to use. And it seems like this schema should be exported and is not currently.
Oh, no, it is. It is.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
Although schema definition is exported, but then this capital N, capital type, capital schema isn't. So.
Right. Now, schema definition is a whole class. It seems like there's, okay, so there's an interface schema definition, and then there's, oh, I see this, there's a class schema that implements schema definition. And schema definition has an include, which includes a bunch of schemas. What the?
Recursive.
It's some recursive interface. Okay. Does that make sense? Groan.
I'm kind of worried about having this module in SCD if like nobody knows how it works and and what all these options do. I wonder if we should maybe use like WASM for this, and because YAML is just a superset of JSON, have a WASM module that can take in a YAML string and convert it into a JSON string and wrap that in an SCD module. Because I'd be a lot more confident in something in crates.io that we can like update every so often.
I mean, well, this is working presumably. I mean, it seems fairly robust. Has all this stuff. I'm not super eager to introduce WASM in unnecessary situations, especially since we don't have like WASM imports working yet.
True.
But I would be very keen to simplify this. Like, okay, what compatibility with JSON parse behavior? Yeah, it seems quite complicated. It seems to have its own error messages and stuff.
Yeah. Also, this whole schema thing, that's like, I don't understand why that has to be part of the parser. Can't that just be something that you do after you've parsed it? You validate the schema?
Right.
Why does the schema validation have to happen during parsing?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting an unknown type back from this parse, so maybe it should just be up to you to validate your own schema and then coerce it into some sort of interface that you're going to use somewhere else.
Yeah.
Another thing with the parse return types. So I was thinking, because the stringify object is a record of a string and an unknown, while the parse return types are just unknowns. I'm not sure if you can just like, if it's like JSON, so just a string is a valid object, or if it has to have a key and then a value.
Yeah. I wonder if that's just typed wrong, or if that actually doesn't work. I guess I'll try it out.
Function to call, yeah. I mean, yeah, it seems quite a bit more. I think this is why we put off this module to to next time, last meeting, because this seems so complicated, this interface. Let's have a look at an example. So you can parse some YAML. That seems fine to me. Looks good. Yeah.
Cool. So I just checked, and the typing is indeed wrong on stringify. It should just be unknown rather than record string unknown. Just passing a string works.
Sorry, say that again.
The type for the object that you pass to stringify is wrong. It should just be an unknown rather than a record string unknown.
Okay. So stringify object.
The stringify for TOML also has the same definition. The record string and unknown, but the TOML parse returns a record string of unknown. So I guess that kind of makes sense for TOML. Maybe it's the YAML one that needs to be updated.
Yeah, no, I think it's the YAML one that needs to be updated.
Okay.
I think TOML actually, you can't specify just a single key. It's always a key value, like their thing.
So wait, you were talking about the return value for the parse type, and you're saying that that should be a record string unknown?
Well, that's what TOML has.
Right.
Yeah, but what we want is I want stringify the object or the thing that you pass to stringify to be an unknown rather than a record string unknown.
Yeah, but if you look at the TOML, the stringify for the TOML accepts a record string of unknown, and it kind of makes sense in that case because you can take the output of parse back to stringify and the types match. So I can see that, and yeah, I guess that would make sense in YAML as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think the TOML ones are correct because TOML doesn't have, like, you can't just stringify a string in TOML. You have to stringify an object. But in YAML, you can actually just stringify a string.
Ultimately, I don't really have an opinion here, but both modules are clearly misaligned, so we should like look at them both at some point.
Yeah, well, they might be misaligned, but I don't know. I think if we updated the YAML one, it'd be correct.
Mm.
You need to add a slash. Oh no, you can't.
So the comment is basically like you should be able to kind of the return type of this should match the input type of this. And Luca's comment is just that in YAML, it makes sense to just stringify a string, does it?
Yeah, it's valid, at least.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable that we should align these two things. But yeah, I can't say I have a strong opinion about it. Why is this options dump? Oh, okay, right, dump options. Maybe we should have a look at dump options now that we're talking about this thing.
Yeah, so that front exported.
YAML dump options as stringify options. Okay, why? Stringify dump options is state options. Jesus. Okay. YAML.
So much
dumper.
Interaction.
Yeah. Dumper state. I know you guys are probably all groaning that I'm doing this manually and don't have jumped definition, but sorry, that's how I work.
You know, modern editors have Control-click for navigation, right?
I do know this. Yes, I like the pain. Okay, so there's a lot of options here. You can specify indentation, makes sense. No array indent, right? I guess YAML has this, you never know if you should indent the dashes or not. Skip invalid, don't throw on invalid types, sure, whatever. Low level specifies the net level of nesting. Okay, don't really know what that is. Styles, each tag may have its own set of styles.
Looking at these options, I kind of wish it only had like the option that JSON.stringify has, where you just specify an indentation number and that's it. Like as long as it's valid YAML, it's valid YAML.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure why you would want to specify a schema and what that does exactly. Yeah, okay, sort keys, this seems ridiculous. Okay, I mean, these things clearly need to go. I'm not sure what styles is actually, but it seems superfluous.
Well, in theory, we could also just like alias YAML stringify to JSON.stringify. Because JSON.stringify outputs valid YAML. I don't know if people would be happy about it.
I think that's not exactly what people want.
Possible.
Sort keys. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, I guess if you pass an object, then it doesn't have an ordering to the keys, and
doesn't it? Don't JavaScript objects have ordered keys?
Do they? I don't think so.
I don't know. Let me check.
They do.
It says they do.
Oh, okay, great.
Line width seems ridiculous.
It's a bit more complicated, but yeah, JSON keys are generally in the order that they were inserted into the object, but not always. Like in Rust, that's optional, and I think we generally have them off. Yeah, it's kind of something that you need to support.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at this. I think removing schema definition makes sense. Does anybody have an idea of what this styles does? Style variant, YAML, dumper, YAML type, TS, style variant. Style variant is lowercase, uppercase, camel case, or decimal. Yeah. Seems like you should just do that in your object that you pass to this thing. It seems like there's a lot of indirection here too, which is difficult when you use a crappy editor. I mean, how do we feel about it? It seems like generally we don't feel great about this module, that it's rather complicated. I would say, we would welcome massive refactors to simplify this. In particular, removing all sorts of schemas from this, removing as many options as possible. Styles seems crazy. Like pared down to the simplest thing, I think. If true, don't convert duplicate objects into references. On the other hand, I mean, this thing is probably working and probably useful for people who actually want to serialize objects to YAML.
I just checked the example, and it's got a lot of the edge cases in there. So I assume if it's in the example, it actually works. But it also seems like there's a ton of options, so I don't know if it works with all the possible options.
Right. Well, in the interest of time, I think we should move on. I would say, we are not ready to stabilize this this module as it is. I think any changes that could simplify this and kind of make it more general, and maybe remove some of these schema definitions, anything that could be removed from this, and if maybe not so important for standardizing the interface, but be nice if kind of this module could be flattened down into, say, one file or a couple files, and not have a directory tree of various things with multiple levels of indirection. Yeah, I think if we get some adjustments to this module and feel like it's getting simpler, then we can readdress this in the future at a future working group meeting. But I mean, as it is right now, I would say it's kind of on the chopping block. But that's just my opinion. I don't want to dictate anything. Does anybody have other?
Well, I just took a look at the latest YAML spec, and styles seem to be like different ways of specifying the same data in YAML. So yeah, I think we might want to support that for serializing YAML.
I see. That's a special YAML thing. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that none of us are YAML experts here. if there is such a thing, I'm sure there is.
Complicated system.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, I think we can definitely say like schema definitions should be out of scope for this, especially when the main interfaces to this system use unknown types.
Especially since like wouldn't TypeScript do most of the job there if we really needed that kind of structured input? Feels a bit random. Over-engineered, I meant.
Yeah, I suspect I vaguely remember this module being submitted, and I'm sure I reviewed it very, very superficially. But I suspect this has been ported from some Node code, and probably a lot of this stuff was not actually written as such. Maybe we should check the copyright. Yeah, so ported from JS YAML. Anyway, we would welcome somebody if anybody is interested in simplifying some of this stuff, particularly taking a look and seeing if it makes sense to remove the schemas from the system and kind of flatten the tree out. Then potentially we keep it. Otherwise, I would say if we get through all the working group meetings and basically nobody's touched it, then I would kick this out into the third-party modules and let it live there, because there's some big unanswered questions about this. All right. If there's no more comments on that, then let's move on to flags. Let me see here. So the flags module is a command line arguments parser. This has also been ported from some Node code. I believe it's ported from something. I forget what it's called. Something famous. Where's the actual code at? Oh, I guess it's all here. I feel like it was one of like Substack modules, but the copyright suggests that it's not, but that may be invalid. I feel like this has been copied from somebody else, but potentially we've revised it quite a bit. In any case, this is a module for based on Minimist. So first order of business is we should correct the copyrights on these pages. Like we should always attribute correctly. This is not. We have made changes, but it comes from Minimist. And yeah, this provides command line parsing flags. Has anybody here used this module?
Actually, yeah, I have.
Yes. Yeah, I used to use it, but I've kind of moved on.
What was your experience, and what have you moved on to?
Well, it's not complicated really, but with I don't know. I've just well, I'm actually unsure about that because I remember using it for Dnon like in the beginning, but I think we wrote our own parser because we had to handle like overriding stuff and stuff.
Yeah, we use it for the HTTP or the file server example. And I remember, like, maybe we can just go there and look at how it's used, because I remember it being rather complicated because we're handling both short versions and long forms of arguments, but the parser doesn't do that automatically, so you have to do it manually. Yeah, this file server arg struct is rather unfortunate.
So, right, so you parse the arguments and you cast it into this structure. Okay.
Yeah.
My takeaway from this flags, I've never been super happy with this module. I've always wanted something a bit more declarative, kind of like the Go flag parsing system, where kind of at the top of the file, you might do something like flags dot, declare int port, something like this, where yeah, I'm not sure how this would work. I'm just making this up on the fly, but if you use Go, you kind of declare the flags at the top of the file, and here it's this, because it's based on this minimist thing. It's quite dynamic. So it's just taking an array of options and just kind of pulling out anything that starts with a dash and making that a key in the return value, right? Which is fast and works for many purposes. And a nice little trick to have. Probably not the most structurally, not the best structural flag parsing system.
Yeah, what I've used a lot recently is Cliffy on DinoLandX. Like, it is pretty much this. It's you declare beforehand what you want. It's actually very similar to what's the Rust one called? Clap.
Clap. Yeah.
Yeah. You declare the command and all their flags. And this is like, I think you need to go to
command.
Yeah, go back one folder. You declare it, and then it'll automatically generate the help for you. And I think it does a lot more than just flag, or than just flag parsing. But yeah, you do this new command, and then you declare everything. And this is pretty nice to use, although this is probably too complicated for STD.
Yeah,
this is a very well maintained third-party module.
Why would it be a wait? Seems weird.
I don't know.
And is it like an asynchronous constructor? This seems very strange.
No, this is an await for the parse down there.
I see. Oh.
But I think when I used it last time, it wasn't a wait. I didn't have to wait it. I'm not sure.
Right.
I think the flags module is really cool, I built the program module around that. Well, it's kind of similar to this Cliffy, I think, but it's probably has not as sophisticated.
Taking a look at Cliffy, there is actually a flags parser too inside of Cliffy that the command part uses.
Uh-huh.
And I think this does pretty similar stuff to what we do in STD, but more.
Well, it seems like you can declare ahead of time which ones you want, so that it doesn't just like the one in STD is really dumb, right? I think it like anything that starts with a dash is becomes a flag.
It's like actually just a parser, and this is like a parser and validator.
Right. This looks pretty. I mean, yeah. This seems actually quite. This is kind of what I would want in a flag parser, actually. Something basic that could be extended by other people who wanted more interesting things. This isn't so opinionated that it contains like help text and generating help text and stuff. Might be a bit much for many people. Like I don't care about generating help text many times. I just want a simple flag parser. But I do want a bit more structure than just everything that starts with a dash becomes a key in the objects.
I just checked, and Cliffy doesn't even use the standard flags module.
Yeah. I mean, so I wish Bartek was here because I feel like he would argue against me on this point. But I would be very keen to replace our minimist flags parsing with something that is very minimal, but a bit more structured than what we currently have in here.
I think you were right though. Like having something that's easily extensible, right? So like if we had something that's good enough for Cliffy to use as the base for their parser, that would be nice. And I think we should look at the Golang implementation for it. It's got a lot of things in there, but it's still very basic. And if you look at the Go ecosystem, a lot of the flag parsing libraries are actually just based off of the standard flag module because of that reason. It's flag singular, yeah.
Oops. This module, this is great. Like everything in Go is fantastic. I mean, it just totally does exactly what you want. The only weird thing about this, and this is one of these holy wars that people have, is like the single dash versus two dashes for long flags. I think it's brilliant. I'm in favor of it. Like, why should we type double dash? Like, so much to type. But yeah, we had a big argument. Bert and I had a big argument about this a long time ago with Dino, and we got rid of the double dash or the single dash flags that were originally accepted.
Thanks, Bert.
Yeah, I mean, I modulo this controversial single dash sort of thing. I think something like this would be very, very nice to have. And I have thought this since day one with this flags module. I think we just landed this because it solves some problems pretty quickly for people. But yeah, I'm not sure how exactly this might look. I'm not suggesting that it have the exact same interface as this. I mean, maybe something like this makes more sense for JavaScript, but I don't know. Yeah, how do you guys feel? Do you think it's unfortunate if the standard working group's conclusion to every module is that this sucks, we should replace it. But I kind of feel like that's the case with this YAML and the flags.
If we want to improve on it, honestly, I don't think we can do it without breaking changes anyway. So if the goal of this meeting is to say, is it stable or not, I think we should say no and rework it.
Good. I am in agreement with that. I would say flags is not stable, and we would accept improvements. It's a bit difficult because we don't want to break existing code that links to flags, but maybe we could introduce a singular flag module or something.
I don't know. I think people should use versioned STD, and if they don't, then your problem.
Then their problem. Yeah.
I think we very, very explicitly always link to versioned STD.
Right.
And there's also a warning if you don't. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So are there more comments on flags? Because I personally would leave it at that we want a new implementation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I like the way that the Cliffy example you showed work. I'm not too keen on the builder approach of Go, where the flags kind of appear out of nowhere. Meaning it makes it a lot harder to test if flags are just kind of implicit. So what you're showing right now at least has that flexibility where you can inject flags and still get the result out of it. But maybe a simpler version, or maybe we can just optionally pass a parser to the flag parser. Well, just sorry, just it can go if you need something more, custom, maybe just a simple function could be passed to the existing parser. That's going to help kind of make it a bit more substantial.
Right, I see what you're saying. So, basically, maybe we should. You're suggesting that we retain the same interface, which by the way, we should at least have a look at. But potentially, we could have kind of a schema, for example, which I was pooping on in the YAML module, but would appreciate in this one.
Well, probably, yeah. Just like a simple function that would return a true-ish, false-ish kind of value that you could use to either validate or invalidate the way that the parser work, and maybe just kind of if it's falsy, you discard it, and if it's true-ish, you can then deal with the result and something like that.
It seems like that's what this unknown function is doing. This function, which, terrible name because it's...
does it kind of just grab everything that's left that was unparsable?
I believe so. It says a function which is invoked with a command line parameter not defined in the options configuration object. If the function returns false, the unknown option is not added to parsed args.
I guess that's what ended up in that underscore section.
Sorry?
And I was saying, I think that's what ends up in the underscore thing where
I see.
things are parsed.
Right. unparsed values.
That's documentation generator.
Oh, right.
But yeah, like that underscore there says contains all the arguments that didn't have an option associated. That was at the bottom.
I'm trying to figure out what it refers to, this options configuration object, and I don't know what that is.
I think it's just the whole orgs parsing options interface, because it contains aliases and the default values for different like names and stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's not terrible. I mean, this flags module is clearly could be made to work in any situation. It just seems like I just want to declare what flags I accept, right? And just say like, hey, I accept a help flag, and not a HEL, a hell flag, right? And I kind of want it to error out if I'm given dash HEL, so that I can say like, hey, did you that's that's not something I understand, without having to like do that parsing that stuff myself.
Maybe you could implement some kind of validator and leave the flag as it is in a minimalistic style, or maybe adjust it a bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, certainly like this thing could be built on top of it, but it just seems like minimalist is, I would guess that the parser could be structured more simply if, yeah, I get the feeling that this minimalist thing is very dynamic in how it's parsing the arguments. Yeah, sorry, this is Tommel. It's kind of disorienting when I can't see anybody. So let's end the discussion with a vote. Who's in favor of keeping the flags as it is and kind of asking people to extend it in other ways? Going once, going twice. Oh. Bert raised his hand. Don't know what that means, but unfortunately he's mute, so he can't say anything.
I'm not sure if I understood the vote exactly.
I propose that we. I propose that we not standardize this flags module, and that we suggest that somebody re-implement it, potentially with something like this Clippy flags, parse flags function. Something, yeah, this is more or less pretty close to what I would want. And the vote is, does anybody disagree with me? Does anybody feel strongly about keeping the minimist flags parser?
Not very strongly, I would say. I mean, I like it a bit more dynamic, I suppose, but Artem, what you are proposing here, but I don't know. I don't really have a very strong opinion about it. So if you do, then we'll do it your way.
Okay. Yeah, I would say maybe not a strong opinion, but I've never felt very happy with the flags module. And let's make something beautiful. And this doesn't seem particularly beautiful.
I would just suggest to to do the different things like parsing and then validating and maybe adapt a scheme on it, doing that in different steps instead of doing all in one go. So everybody can choose what he wants to use. If you want to only parse the arguments, you can. If you want to validate your flags, you also can with another step, and so on.
Yeah, I disagree. I would rather it just all be very I would rather it be stricter rather than looser.
Yeah, I think the issue is that the parser itself can depend on if you specify that an argument, if you specify that a flag can be passed multiple times, you want the parser to know about that, so the parser can I don't know, or use comma separated values for flags. You want the parser to know that values for a flag are allowed to be comma separated, or they're not allowed to be comma separated, or that you need to have an equal sign, or that you don't need to have an equal sign for specific flags. I think that's something the parser needs to know about rather than just the validator.
I see.
It'd be nice. I mean, in Go, all Go command line utilities kind of have, you can parse flags in different ways, and Go, because all Go programs use this relatively strict flag module package. They all have the same form to them, and I think that's quite nice. And ultimately, I think it would be nice if all Deno modules aren't just very free form and everybody does arguments however they want, but that there's kind of a structured way of doing this, so that for example, that long arguments are always use double dashes and not one dash, for example. If that's what, not that I particularly care about that, but just that they have the same form of argument parsing.
Well, I guess the only thing that comes to mind is the way we ditch the schema of the YAML package, but now we're schema and the flag module, yay. It's either we do the schema after or we don't.
That's I guess a good point.
Playing devil's advocate here, I mean, if there's ever a way we can use maybe TypeScript to the advantage of schemaing things, maybe, I don't know.
Well, this is really runtime validation. You can't really use TypeScript to do runtime validation.
And another thing, I think the STD library modules, they should be as unopinionated as possible. Is that right?
I agree with that.
So if we press on, kind of disallowing for, let's say, a single dashed flags, then we do exactly the opposite, no?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm fine. I would rather be opinionated when it comes to flag parsing, because I mean, I guess the question is why does Cliffy not use the standard flag parser? Why did they re-implement this themselves? It's somehow being more general makes it less applicable, right? Not that I've ever written a command flag parsing system, but I don't know. You kind of, if for example you want a Boolean value, you kind of want it to understand -- no in front of the flag, and just kind of have that work out of the box without having to write that yourself.
Well, I think, yeah, this is one of those things where the parser needs to know about it beforehand. You don't want to just want everything with no in front of it. Or maybe you do, I don't know. But I know currently with the flag parser, our flag parser does support this no thing, but there's no way to configure it. It always does it.
Okay, well, I'm going to call the discussion over with this flags thing. I think the conclusion is that consensus is not met. I'm against the current implementation. I want something stricter, and I guess some people are happy with it, that it's generalizable, but yeah.
I think something stricter doesn't need to per se be less generalizable. Something stricter can also be just as general as this is, if you have the right configuration options for it.
Yeah. Great. Moving on to our next module. I'm just going to keep things moving here. I'm sorry to be inconclusive about this, but I'm not ready to standardize the flags module as it were. Let's talk about file system stuff. We're 0 for 2 so far today. This file system module is quite large. I'm guessing it's the largest module that we have in the system in STD, and it contains all sorts of stuff. I think it's basically everything that we, the Deno built-in object has a bunch of file system stuff, and this file system module kind of contains higher level things on top of the basic things that you have. Maybe I should pull up the runtime API here. So for example, chmod, Deno chmod changes the permissions on a file, right? This is something that's not in the FS module, but the FS module contains things like walk. So walking a directory of stuff. So in general, I think this module makes a lot of sense, and I think it's relatively well documented. Any comments kind of on the overall module, as it were, and maybe it's how it interacts with kind of the built-in things?
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I think we could make it a little more, align it a little more with the built-ins. Our built-ins usually take string or URL. STDFS usually only takes string.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've made an effort in the past couple months to always take a URL parameter for the built-in, the runtime paths, and in the FS module probably that's not the case, but it should be easy to do that. Yeah, so for example, empty dir only takes a string here.
Yeah. There's another thing, which is that, I think we, or some of us, understand what POSIX APIs exist, and so that makes it maybe a little bit clear what one can expect where. Mm-hmm. But there are certain APIs, such as like copy, for example, that we could imagine to be in core, and from my perspective, don't really make much sense to have in like STD. And then there are all sorts of APIs here. For example, exists, where you know, I suppose people added that because Node.js has something like that. But the understanding is that they're kind of like fundamentally or conceptually unsound, and that's why people shouldn't be using them at all. And the question becomes like, we can imagine these functions to exist in the node compatibility layer, which is also part of STD, but I don't really see much sense in adding them to a separate STD module also. And I mean, I don't really know how other people feel about this.
What's the issue with exists? I mean, seems useful. Is it racy? Are you saying?
Well, I mean, yeah, most patterns where you would use it are racy. Like, you know, if you want to open a file, just try to open it and see if it works, right? And then the other issue is that it cannot distinguish versus like, oh, you're not, you know, there's another reason this file, we could not stat it. For example, you don't have the permissions, or in some operating systems, the file must maybe locked or something. In Node.js, that would generally cause the file to report as non-existent. And I think the Node.js documentation even says just try to stat it. If it doesn't, you know, if stat throws, then you know what's actually going on. And it's like the implementation of exist is just stat under the hood. So why wouldn't you just call that? Yeah, I've kind of like, I mean, we can go over these individual functions, but you know, those are kind of like the concerns I'm looking for. I do agree that there are some features that you really want to have in STD, like, you know, anything that walks a tree, for example. There are generally no APIs, no system APIs for that, so it makes sense to have here. But then, you know, there's like move. Like, what's the difference between move here and like rename in the, you know, I mean, like, I think it's very unobvious why, you know, what the difference is. I doubt there is any difference. But,
yes. So there, I mean, well, okay, there are multiple points you've made there, but there has been some PRs that people submitted trying to add basically really simple wrappers around the built-in functions to STDFS. So for example, make dir, yeah, they were rejected because those are built-in APIs. But I can understand the problem, which is that you know, it's not super obvious which APIs are in STD and which APIs are in this built-in object. The answer, by the way, is that, you know, generally POSIX APIs are built in. That is kind of system calls. Although we don't strictly stick to that, because I believe we have things like make dir recursive, which is not strictly a single system call.
But it's very useful.
Very useful and super easy to add to the built-in API, and so we just did it. But yes, so good points. There's kind of this weird dichotomy between, you know, this standard FS stuff and kind of the built-in APIs.
Say what, Jim? What's up?
I feel like Bert was talking to somebody else. Okay, so yeah, let's kind of go through these. I think we can probably do these relatively quickly. Luca already made the point that we should probably accept URLs here. This copy function, I think is pretty clear what it does. Has an overwrite parameter and it has a preserve timestamps parameter, which seems fine to me, I think.
Yeah. I do wonder, but you started with this copy, but there's two functions above that, why are they exported? I assume for tests, but they should not be exported from this. They should be internal.
Okay. Okay, so I would say copy is okay. Detect seems a little bizarre to me. Detect the end of line character for string input returns null if no new line. And this EOL is an enum with LF and carriage return line feed. Presumably to detect whether this is a Windows file or a normal file.
There is a format function also that changes the line endings from LF to 0LF or the other way around. But I feel like those are kind of out of the scope of the FS module because they modify the contents of files.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sounds more like an I/O module.
Text files, right? They operate on strings. So I mean, maybe they should be in like the encoding module or something. Plus, their names are really undescriptive. I mean, like detect what, format in a file module. I would expect it to format a drive or something. Maybe format line endings. So yeah, I don't know. Names are all that.
I would say let's remove both detect and format, and let's leave that up to whoever needs it to implement it. Should be extremely simple to it should be very trivial.
Maybe you could go in encoding UTF-8.
Sure.
UTF-8 doesn't make much sense in my opinion, but somewhere in encoding, encoding new line maybe.
Yeah. Sure, encoding /eol.ts maybe, something like that. If at all, I would also be totally fine if we just removed this from whatever, because this seems very random. Okay, so we're going to remove detect and format, either move them to encoding or remove them entirely. How about empty dir? This ensures that a directory is empty, deletes the directory contents if the directory is not empty. If the directory does not exist, it is created. The directory itself is not deleted. Requires allow read and allow write. Very specific.
Seems reasonable. I think it makes sense. I think I've even used it. I would want it to take a mode though for when it's creating.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So an options object with a mode.
Yeah.
I would perhaps rename it to ensure empty dir instead of just empty dir, because I feel like there is ensure dir sync and like all of those other ensure kind of patterns in the names.
I agree with that as well.
Rename it to what? Sorry?
Ensure empty dir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think both of those changes would be welcome. And I think we're okay with the behavior. I mean, seems a bit random to me, but whatever. I mean, that's what this module is for. So I can totally imagine that being useful. Okay, so we also have this, moving on, we have ensure dir. This ensures that the directory exists. The directory if the directory structure does not exist, it is created. It's like make dir-p, requires allow read and allow write.
Sorry for interrupting. I think we have this feature in std already, right? And mkdir recursive does the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's just take a look at the implementation. Ensure dir.ts, and it stats the thing, and if it's not a directory, then it errors out. Otherwise, it does make dir. Yeah, I think this can be removed and just use make dir, right?
This also seems racy to me.
Yeah. Probably just using make dir recursive would do what you want better.
Yes.
I assume it also throws, and also this throws a plain error, which is
okay.
I think so. We have Deno core errors for this, or Deno.
We're going to remove this ensure dir. Ensure file. It ensures that the file exists. If the file is requested to be created in its directory, if the file that is requested to be created is in directories that do not exist, these directories are created. If the file exists, it is not modified.
It begs the question why we don't do that in, let's say, Deno write text file or Deno write file, like we have a recursive option.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually there was I wrote an issue back in August on Deno number 7262 with the exact question. And the argument there was that we have that in the FS module, but maybe we can change that now.
Yeah.
Can you give me that issue number again?
7262. I think it, yeah.
So what was it?
7262.
I still didn't catch it.
7262.
7262. Thanks.
So the argument here is that this should just be a behavior of write file, Deno.write file.
Yeah, this is already behavior of Deno.open. Like we have this whole open options where you can specify all these things. I don't see why we shouldn't use the exact same open options thing for write or for write text file or write file.
I guess the main thing is, does it create the directories that it's in? I think write file definitely does not do that, right?
No, it doesn't ensure dir. So
basically what we'd be saying is, I guess what my question is it useful to have ensure file that basically does exactly this? I would, this seems not good in this part. These are like helpful error messages, I guess, is what they're going with.
Yeah, I mean, this is also racy again. You know, you basically want to try to create it, and you want it as an extra option to open or like write file, like try to create the file or open the file. If you get a not found error only, then you can try to do a recursive make there and try to open again. Yeah. I think it's kind of weird to have like one extra edge functionality, and for that reason we have this like a whole bag of APIs in the standard library. I don't see the point.
Right. But I think it is useful for people to have kind of random kind of functionalities that things that you can take off the shelf without having to and this is obviously a very simple function to implement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying, like, if this is something useful, I don't think it justifies having the file system module in STD. You could easily add that to the standard library.
Right. Okay. So potentially we would add a option to say write file that allows you to potentially create the directories as before you write the file.
Yes, I think it makes more sense.
And maybe also one that lets you specify what you want to do if the file already exists. If you still want to write then, or if you want to do nothing. So sort of the create new and truncate options on Deno.open options.
Let me pull up the write file. Okay, so we've got write file, and this takes a path, and it takes a uint8 array, and then it takes some write options, and the write options are append, create, or mode. And so the idea is that we would add like create DIRs or something like that to this.
Yeah, or just recursive. I mean, is that maybe too obscure? And we might want to make sure that these are sort of in sync with the open options. I mean, I'm missing, I think, the exclusive option here potentially. So like that means like you only write it if it doesn't already exist, or it's kind of like the opposite of this.
But there is already a create option, no? So if the file does
just it won't create the directories. So I think the worry is that, say you do deno.write file foo/bar/a/b/c.text, and like none of those directories exist yet. This create option is not going to allow you to create the file. It won't create the directories that are missing. But this does open some questions, like what is the mode of the directories that are created? There's
But arguably, one could, if that's really a concern, one could do make the recursive with specifying the mode before using write file. And the same question applies to standards, the ensure file that currently is in standards, right? I mean, I don't think it lets you specify a separate mode and apply to the directory.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I think this all kind of comes down to the granularity of these built-in functions, especially with I think we originally set out with kind of only having kind of syscalls bound to this Deno object, but write file is not a syscall. It's kind of a utility function and just nice to have. And make dir recursive is not just a syscall. It's a recursive syscall. And so the question is just like, where does that stop? Like how, why should we just kind of expand the built-in APIs to make them more useful?
Well, if it means that we don't have, like extra functions that are like slightly more useful in that STD, because like a lot of them are like two system function kind of composed together more or less, right? So if it allows us to stabilize and remove some of these, maybe. And I think to Bert's argument, I mean, if you go with the convenience of creating your subdirectories recursively like this, you don't really care about their mode anymore, right? If you did care, you would create them first and do it the long way. But if you go with the convenience, it's normal that you forgo kind of the granularity of it. Yeah.
And it's also
I would, so maybe rehashing my argument a little bit, but I think it makes more sense to slightly expand the functionality in core than to have two distinct places where FS modules go, and especially by the look of it, the additional value that this stdfs module adds is very split. I mean, like, there's very little in here. It really makes no sense. But yeah, maybe walk and glob and stuff.
Yeah, like walk and expand glob. I think those are probably the most useful ones.
Okay.
I would agree.
So what's our conclusion with ensure file then? I can't say I really care either way.
Yeah, I think if we keep it, we should change the implementation to be not so racy.
Mm-hmm.
One of my argument there is like, if you remove ensure dir, then remove ensure file. If you keep ensure file, then keep ensure dir. And then like there's the sync, the symlink one, which is I guess the same conversation. Well, link and symlink. Well, yeah. So if anything, I would call it for like unity and be like, look, keep all of them or remove all of them. And just because it's expectation. If you're like, why is there no ensure dir? Because if there is an ensure file, you'll be like, why is not there? It should be there, So that's why like my first answer was I like that module, even though I agree that most of them are kind of like, nice to have. The convenience that kind of couple a few system calls together and just make it nice.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, if I'm throwing together a script, which this system is, this whole Deno system is built for, I don't particularly care. Like I would like to be able to ensure that a file exists, or ensure that there's some empty directory somewhere. So I kind of would like to. I think this functionality is useful, although I agree it's a bit racy.
Yeah, but if it's useful, then we can add it to CLI as options like this. Ensure dir, for example, is like not necessary. That's literally mkdir, like mkdir,
right?
-p.
Right. So okay. So let's talk about, maybe it will clarify things if we talk about ensure link then. So this ensures that a hard link exists. If the directory structure does not exist, then it is created. And we have presumably deno.link, read link. I believe it's unstable actually, because we have some concerns around the security of links, which we should probably resolve. But
this is just links, hard links, which we get the question: whoever creates hard links?
Nobody creates hard links, but you know, whatever.
I don't know what they are.
Exactly. Nobody creates them. But whatever. Let you know, talk about Symlink if we care. But you know, presumably we still want to have a binding for this. And so I guess the question is would we add an options here that says like link in a recursive option, I guess is what was suggested for write file.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if we cared enough, which I find dubious, but then that would where it goes. And by the way, I think an options tag would be warranted in these functions anyways, because there are other questions you have, like, for example, should it replace the target, which is, in case of link, a little bit unspecified, I think, whether it does that. I kind of suspect that we're going to add one anyway.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. Symlink, by the way, has options. You can specify type file dir. I think that's some sort of Windows issue.
Oh, actually, this recursive thing, this would obviously impact permissions, because it would let you figure out, well, would it? Yeah, yes, you could use it to, could you? It might be possible for you to figure out the directory structure of a system using just allow write. So if you specify this recursive, it might be needed that you also have allow read.
For Symlink specifically, or for all of these?
No, for all of them. For all of them.
Can you?
That also just open, I think. You know, basically every file, every API that creates a new file system object will be affected by that.
Yeah, but we sort of already make this. I don't know. I have to think about it. I'm not sure if we already protect against this in other places, that you can't figure out the directory structure using just allow write. Because I think we already do this with CWD, like that we hide CWD in outputs if you don't have allow read or allow env or something specified.
Yes. Well, I think, yeah, I forget where that's used, but isn't that like in stack traces or something?
No, it's in, I don't think it's in stack traces. I think it's in error messages, but I don't remember what for.
I mean, I think that if we wanted to like seriously mitigate that entirely, then somewhere in the error translation layer, you know, or we need to swallow e is dir and e not dir and e exist, or like coalesce all of those error messages into the same one. So you cannot use that to determine, you know, what the reason is that the call failed.
That's true.
Is it like a, yeah, I mean, I would say it's in the limit. We might need to fix that. I don't think it's like a very big security concern. And, you know, Symlinks and whatever, like making sure people can only write to a subdirectory of some specified root is the biggest challenge that we currently have and haven't really figured out. Yeah, I mean, it's also a bit off topic, I suppose. Like whatever you can do is as secure as the system.
Sure.
Yeah, let's try to stay on the topic of this FS module here. So it sounds like what we want to do is basically get rid of all of these ensure functions and add option bags to the corresponding built-in APIs, so that basically people can do this out of the box with kind of recursive directory creation. So that would apply to that would, you know, ensure dir is already exactly make dir recursive. That would apply to write file, which is this ensure file. That would apply to this ensure link and ensure symlink, which you know, they would dino.symlink would basically get an options bag with a recursive option. And yeah, so I guess I'm okay with that. Any arguments against that?
Nope.
Okay, so ensure star is getting moved into core. Cool. All right, so on to exists. Bert brought up the problem of the fact that this is kind of racy. I would argue against this. This is super useful, so useful. I hate when it's difficult to tell if a file exists. I don't care if it's racy. Like,
but isn't that just actually implemented correctly? Like this only returns false if it's not not found. In other cases, it will just rethrow the error.
Couldn't you just do like a stat? Well, it's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, it's just a stat that, you know, basically coerces the result into a Boolean.
Yeah, well, I mean, read the doc. I just pasted it in the chat. Node decided to deprecate it. I don't really see a reason why you would like add it.
Yeah, I know. I remember this happening, and everybody hates this because they're just like, how the hell do I tell if a file exists? like what do you mean I have to stat it? Like, isn't this like the same thing?
No, that's not the point. The point is generally twofold, which is, first of all, well, there are very few cases where it's actually a good idea to use exist, because, you know, just open it if you want to know if you know, what are you going to do after that, you know? And it's just, yeah, like just leads people on the path of doing something stupid, you know?
Sure, yeah, probably, but it's still useful. I definitely use Python's exist thing all the time. It's like the most useful function that exists. I don't know. It's just like, you know, sometimes you got to tell if a file, you know, does this directory exist? Yes or no?
I use these functions a lot. They're really useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's so useful. I mean, how about like I don't know.
It does not exist in Go. So
if exists target debug Dino. If this doesn't exist, then make. You know, like, why not? Like, I don't want to open that file. I want to run some commands.
Yeah, so
isn't that ensure now?
For this use case, Node recommends the use of actions, but
which is, and what's okay? So okay, so now I have to write. Okay, fs access. Where's the synchronous version of this?
it's access sync and it doesn't take a callback.
If target debug Dino, if this, then and what does it return? It returns okay. If access sync is okay, you know, it's just like what the fuck is this thing even for? Okay, sure. Then I can make it. Cool. So much safer now. Why?
I think it's also about that this is more safe than it's like you can't misuse the, or yeah, well, actually, yeah, you can still misuse this, but people are less likely to misuse it.
To be fair, I think the use cases where you would want to use exist are probably for like one-off scripts, and in that case, like, what are the odds of a race condition happening?
You know, I think the case that Ryan is describing, I think that it is somewhat fair. You're calling an external command. I mean, I suppose make actually, you imagine it to be running make. That works, although you could just call make anyways in the target directory, and if it fails, if it doesn't exist, then oh no, that doesn't work. Okay. Yeah. Generally speaking, I think the point is that if you want to know if the directory exists, generally that is because you want to do something with the thing you're testing, and the better pattern here is to just try to do it, and
right.
If it doesn't work.
My point is that is not always what you want to do. Some there are valid reasons to want to see if a file exists. Like that's perfectly valid. Yes, you should not do you know, if exists foo.txt, you know, then I'm going to open foo.txt. This is bad, right? But that doesn't mean that you know, that this is wrong. Like, this is totally fine.
That's true, but I mean, it's undeniable that we are just reviewing the implementation of a bunch of functions in the standard library who all do the wrong pattern. I mean, do you need more proof that this makes people do the wrong thing?
I mean, people, I mean, the world is inherently racy. Like, I think we can't force people to do the right thing. But I don't know. I think exist is super useful. Like, I do not agree with Node's decision here.
Yeah, Node also has this FS extra NPM package, which has like recursive maker, because Node still doesn't have that in.
I'm just curious, is there a way we could write exist to not be racy?
Well, the issue is not that exist itself is racy, because it's not. The issue is that you're checking something. It's a time of use, time of check, time of use. Well, that's no race condition, but
yeah,
but you want to do something. You want to check what you should be doing is checking the output after you've tried to do it, rather than preemptively checking if it's going to work. Like, you should just do it, and if it fails,
yeah,
then do something. Yeah,
I'm just thinking, like, if somebody wants to use the shorthand to do something and that ends up being racy, not having the option and forcing people to do the long-winded version of doing it is probably end up going to be racy anyway in the user's code. So having it in the code, in the standard library, yeah, it's probably fine, I guess.
I think so. Else, we probably will use a third party anyway.
I see the stdfs to be mostly convenience. So, you know, if it's useful and it works, it should be there. And yeah, keep it.
I don't see how like exists is any different from Node's FS access, but then like only works with not found with the not founder.
I mean, essentially Node, you know, at some point there are some people reporting some bugs because somebody did something racy like this, and they were like, okay, I know, we'll solve this problem by deleting this, and you know, we'll get rid of this exists function, and then people won't have this bug anymore. But it's like, I mean, it doesn't quite solve the problem, right? I mean, it just kind of makes people's lives more painful. Although, yeah, maybe it makes them think twice before using it, because this exists thing doesn't. I mean, in part, I think this file system thing is maybe just having some names that are easy to. I mean, you know, what are you going to do when you want to do something like this? You're going to Google, you know, Dino file exists. Like, how do I check if a file exists in Dino? Oh, I do this. Great, done. And you know, if I have to do Node file exists, how do I check if a file exists in Node? It's like, oh, I have to do this. Okay, what does that mean? Like, why do I have to put this okay here? I just want to know if it exists or not. Like, why can't you just tell if a file exists? I don't understand. Maybe I should read their reasoning. Were you part of this, Bert? He's gone.
I don't remember, to be honest, but I mean, I think I basically didn't care.
Yeah.
But the question is like, will people figure out that, oh, I need this convenience function. Now I'm going to import like the standard library for it. I mean, like, is that really a nice solution? Like,
yeah, why not? I mean, it's a small function.
If there's any concern with like raciness, can we just document it? Just like mention it, like there might be cases where this can cause issue. Here's an example of that, and just be aware.
I think that's a great solution. Yes. Like,
I was about to say this.
Document with, you probably should not be using this function. Use this and this and this instead. And these are the use cases where it's actually valid.
Probably also check the examples in the README to make sure that they use like the suggested approach.
Okay, so I'm going to note that
infinite space in the JS doc.
You know, docs that note raciness. I think that would totally solve everybody's problem. Okay, so you know, we're almost out of time here. Let's see if we can't finish up this file system module here. Gosh, how do our documentation system really needs some improvement. I guess I have to click mod, and then I have to click view docs here. Okay. So, okay, we've talked about exists and exists sync. These things seem fine. They just need a bit more documentation to explain that they could be racy. Expand glob expands a glob string from the specified root directory and yield each result as a walk entry object. See glob to reg expression. See glob to regex for details on supported syntax. So here's an example where you can give kind of a recursive glob, and you want to look at all TypeScript files in all subdirectories, and you can do this for await across it. And there's also a synchronous version of this. It takes the glob as a string argument as the first thing. And then the second option is in options object. I'm kind of not so useful how this is expanded in the documentation. But the options take a root, I guess the file system root where this is going to be expanded from, various files that are going to be excluded, I guess, as strings, and include DIRs, not super clear on what that is.
It should also yield a walkthrough entry for the directory itself, or only for the files inside the directories. Mm-hmm. So we should probably add documentation to
that. Would it be crazy, just brainstorming here, would it be crazy to sort of mash expand glob and walk in like a single function and have the input parameter be like either a string or an instance of a glob pattern? Because it's essentially the same thing. It's just one takes an actual path and the other one takes a glob pattern.
I mean, I personally am happy to have this kind of lower level walk function where I can, you know, concretely specify things, just because like regular expressions are kind of hairy. There's more involved with this expand glob than there is with walk. So I like having this discrepancy.
I feel like, you know, a glob, I'm thinking of Unix glob, and like this one, like now is kind of a weird mix of globs and regex. Could it just be, if you want a regex, can I just pass a regex, like an instance of regex? Because you know, just a glob is just */**.ts, and now we have like escapes of the slash. It's kind of awkward.
Okay.
I don't know. I do think writing globs is a lot easier for most cases than it is writing regexes.
It's not super clear like what what is supported in the globs, because globs and regexes are quite different, I think, although look similar.
Globs, those are just like stars and square brackets and question marks, right? I mean, that's how this should basically be simple shell globs and nothing else.
Well, apparently we support quite a lot of things. So we support like ORs, we support all sorts of random stuff here, actually.
We have a glob to reg expression function in the path module.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. So that takes a string glob and returns a regular expression. Yeah.
So if you want to use a glob, you could just use that one to create your reg expressions. If the function should take a regular expression.
Right. So I guess maybe we should also take a regular expression as the first argument here. I guess then expand glob wouldn't make so much sense. Or
yeah, I'm just thrown by this, you know, escaped slash there. Like you can very easily, you know, any Unix system can easily just write a glob, not escape any slash, and it'll expand all the files dynamically. And that's what I expect it to be. So if it's going to be a string, they'll make it a weird mess of regex and strings. And even the, you know, like what is it? Oh no, I'm thinking of something different. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be a superset of like normal Unix globs that maybe can like take some extra regex stuff. But like all Unix globs should probably work and be converted to like valid regex as expected.
Because
if
no, sorry, I was just going to keep complaining. I was just going to say if I were to use this function, I do like */**.ts and it doesn't work. Maybe it does, but if it doesn't work, I would be very mad. Like I would, you know, it doesn't make any sense.
I'm not sure what this backslash is about, and I kind of suspect that it might have something to do with the fact that this is written in JSDoc, and maybe somebody was trying to escape some So let me just look in here, expand glob. I agree, it should, when calling this function, I would not expect to have to escape a /. And what I think is maybe they did this because when you don't do that, the syntax highlighting breaks.
Good to know.
That's my guess. I have no idea.
It's just the syntax highlight because it ends up closing the block comment.
Wow.
Yeah, this is not great. Yeah, does the block comment end? Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh no, it doesn't end the block.
See a bug in our documentation thing, or
no, it's if we have what probably works, right? I mean, probably if I take this code and I copy it into a file, you know, if I go into here, I shouldn't spend time doing this, XJS, do this, and then I can do import, expand, glob from HTTPS.
Yeah, it works. You don't need the /.
Okay, so yeah, this / is not part of the interface of the file. It's a problem with JSDoc, I guess, and our interaction with it. So let's not discuss it further, just because it's a separate problem.
Yeah, if anybody wants to open an issue on the website about that, it's probably
yeah, so that's definitely a bug that we should address, but it's not part of the interface of expand glob. I mean, I find this useful. This is the sort of useful utility that if I was just munging around, I would be happy to find. I also find walk very useful, and I think both of these are quite involved programs, subroutines.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that walk takes like this follow symlink thing, but glob doesn't. I would expect it.
Yeah,
I'm actually not sure what happens if like a shell script or if like bash would follow symlinks in globs. Probably not.
Yeah, I would kind of expect expand glob options. I feel like our back button doesn't work very well. I would expect the expand glob options kind of extends the walk options even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it currently extends glob options. So we'd need to extend both walk and glob options. But that's fine.
I hadn't noticed this before, but the walk options have this God, where is it? It's got a regexp, right? Like match and ext for extensions. So that's a bit weird.
Right. So you're saying that potentially walk could be used just like expand glob if you use this match?
Well, if I'm a newcomer, right, and I don't even know what a glob is, and I'm trying to just like go through a list of files that match a certain pattern, what am I most likely to look at? Expand glob or walk with a couple of options?
Well, it depends what kind of newcomer you are. A lot of people are scared of regex. And like the */* thing is very omnipresent in a lot of like, you know, node stuff or whatever. So at least they know that, that's for sure. That's what I think.
True, but you always can convert that to a regex with the function in the path module.
Oops, I have to. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. We are at 2 hours here. Unfortunately, I feel like we haven't come to a conclusion on expand glob and walk here, and we also have move to discuss. When we're only a couple people here, I would be happy to go another 15 minutes or so. Would you guys be okay with that? I don't want to,
yeah, sure.
cut anybody off here. Okay, let's see if we can't just get through this file system modules and collect some comments on that, and then we'll call it a day. I'm still sharing my screen, hopefully. Yes. Okay, so just to bring it back, so we're having a discussion about walk versus expand glob, and I think the comments are about whether potentially walk is sufficient enough, and not necessary to have this expand glob.
I think absolutely, just like William just pointed out, if there's a match option for a regex, it can be a glob option for glob, and we call it a day, like merge the two together and just have walk.
I guess I don't have any specific things to say against that. I mean, that makes sense, but I kind of expect that this expand glob, I kind of want to grep for this and see where it's used, because I suspect you can't just take this expression and stick it into this match thing. I don't think it's going to work like that.
Well, that's not what I said. I said let's just have an option for glob and pass a glob.
Okay, yeah, I guess that would work. Yeah, actually, it's not really used. That's surprising.
Super awesome to be able to like do a grep on the registry, see what's used in there.
That would be nice. Yeah.
I just checked quickly, and I can only see like test data and tests and mod that directly import expandglob.ts, although it could be imported via mod.ts too.
So I would be happy to kind of converge this with the walk by adding another option, or potentially coercing it into this match option. I'm not sure if that works or not.
I think it makes sense, since the match accept right now regex. So if it's a string, we can assume it's a glob and just go with it.
That makes sense to me. Anybody strongly against this? So we're going to merge expand glob into this walk, and we're going to allow match to take a regular expression or a string, I guess. I'm not sure why it's an array of things, but I guess that's probably useful. Okay. Okay, so I guess that's, there's some extra options here that it has, though, like root, exclude, include DIRs. I wonder how that would be handled with something in the match.
Include DIRs is already there in your walk options.
Right.
And the exclude part is because there's some kind of like Unix glob that don't have excluding, although we had like a flavor of it in Node that's with like the a bang to exclude something. And I guess that this option was added to kind of like stick with a Unix version.
Right. Right. And so I guess, and the root is actually specified in this walk. So I guess all of those options are actually accounted for. Yeah, I feel like the exclude thing is not so useful.
Sorry, I missed the part before. Why are we supporting globs instead of, or not instead, but parallel to regex?
Expectation from some communities.
Like I personally know I like to use globs way better than regexes, because writing a regex for like figuring out all the files that have a .ts on the end is like, no, please.
Yeah, I think it's kind of annoying because, like, you know, slash has a special meaning and dot has a special meaning, which are characters that are very common in Fast. So I totally see the value of supporting globs. Yeah, it's like a matter of like, okay, what glob features do people expect to, you know, there's a whatever dash, whatever you can do with dash, or like whatever goes into a git ignore file. That, you know, that basically there is a whole palette of feature set that. And a little bit of a slippery slope too sometimes. But I think it's more important to nail that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's useful. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I see. But why not use just the path function then?
Yeah.
What's the path function?
Well, the glob to regex.
Yeah.
Because regex is built in to JavaScript and globs are not, so I would expect to to handle that a bit differently, I guess.
Yeah, I would probably expect like if the match parameter takes a string type, I would probably expect it to just match a string instead of match a glob.
Then let's just have the utility exposed. You know, it takes a string that's a glob and return a regex and pass. Then people can just pass to match with that function. You know, you'll do match and expand glob, pass your glob, it'll return a regex. We don't have to change anything, and we remove one function.
Yeah, but now you have to know how to call this like expand glob thing.
We can document that.
Or what's the function called in the path function?
Glob to regex.
Glob to regex options. Regex. So basically, you're saying that this match thing is general, and anybody who wants to use a glob should just themselves call this glob to regex and then pass it into this match thing. Seems kind of arduous if you ask me, but I see the point.
I mean, the glob to regex function also has options, so we don't have to handle that in the walk function or in the walk options.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
I kind of like the idea that we had before about like expand glob sort of inheriting from the options of walk. Maybe we could just change the internals of expand glob to use basically walk with a glob to regexp. So the convenience thing is still there. You can just say like, hey, I want to walk by expanding a glob pattern, but under the hood, it's using walk with some magic to call a glob to regexp.
I mean, presumably that's what it's doing.
Then I guess the name is kind of weird.
Which name? Expand glob?
Yeah.
How so? Why?
Well, this is what you would call it, like if you're in the show, you say, I expand the glob.
That's what your friendly sysadmin would say.
Go expand.
No, I think it makes sense. It just like it has no relationship to walk. I guess is why I said that. You know, like it's exactly walk, but it's not like called walk gloves, for example. And it just like make them feel very different, even though they're exactly the same. Well, not exactly, but pretty much the same. Sorry.
I mean, this is pretty nice code, though, to be able to write just as a convenience function, even if it is kind of the same.
Yeah, I know I've definitely done this before. I've used this.
These functions are deceptively complex. I'm just poking around at the implementations. It is non-trivial what's happening here. And it does not appear that it just converts the string, the glob string, into a regex and then call walk. It seems like it is doing other things. Whether those things are useful or not, I can't determine right now. But it's not as we thought originally.
Yeah, because I think it does a lot more than just like the basic Unix regex glob. Sorry, and yeah.
Okay. So now I'm reversing my opinion. I feel like we should keep expand glob. Actually, seems useful.
Maybe just simplify the implementation.
So simpler, sure. I don't even want to get into the implementation details because that's too much of a hairy road. But yes, obviously we would be happy to simplify any implementation stuff. I think the one thing that still applies is maybe this expand glob options should inherit from the walk options or extend walk options, so that you kind of have these more general things in here.
Yep. And
And potentially, the implementation should just call glob to regex and then pass that directly to walk in the match parameter. But I'm not sure if that's possible. Okay. Gosh, time flies. We're at 15 minutes again. Let's quickly just look at these options in walk. I mean, some of these things seem a little weird to me, like having extensions. Like, do people feel like anything here should be removed? Are these walk options okay?
If we have expand glob, I feel like extension and match are really sort of redundant.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, depending on if it calls walk itself.
Well, even if it doesn't, even if it doesn't, conceptually, it's if I want to match certain extensions or a certain pattern, I would use expand glob rather than walk.
Well, that's not entirely fair.
Well,
I mean,
what I think is, go ahead.
Okay, Luca, go.
I think these extensions, like this is something that you could also do with a regex match.
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of like a utility function on top of this match.
Mm-hmm.
I think walk should be like the lowest level thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it has just match and skip, and like
I mean, you could do. Yeah, I think you could do. I mean, presumably it's iterating over all the files anyway. It's not like these go down into the kernel and are you know, optimize the process. So, I mean, presumably you could do this yourself. So these are kind of conveniences.
Yeah. That's what you would do in Go anyway. Walk doesn't have any sort of options. If you want to filter stuff, you do it yourself.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, potentially we just remove all of these.
Yeah, I think I do agree, especially thinking about that at some point in the future, async iterators will have a map function and a filter function, or method, I mean, once TC39 finally does that.
Yeah. The other ones seem reasonable. Follow symlinks, sure. Include DIRs, sure. I think I know what that means. Include file.
I mean, like, what's the difference between read DIRs and if you have not include DIRs, or am I just misunderstanding what this does?
Yeah, so what include dir does is it yields one walk entry for each dir it encounters, as well as yielding one walk entry for each file.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Although I don't agree that it's true by default.
If you only want to see DIRs, then you would set this to true and this to false, and you could just only see the directory entries.
Yeah.
Max depth makes sense. Seems reasonable. Follow symlinks. Okay, so I'm going to write down that we want to remove these guys, and that's going to be left up to the user.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
And guys, I'm sorry to keep you once more. We have one more function to talk about, this move function, but this will finish it off. Are we happy with move here? This seems reasonable to me.
I just had one question about this since the beginning. I'm sorry. Just like, is there a system where rename is the default? Because to me, like when I want to rename a file, I'll move it to the same place with the new name, right? And so I was wondering why weren't they switched?
Yeah, what's the difference between this and move? Rename, sorry.
Rename doesn't work across different file systems, for example.
Does this?
Because I assume it was just move with override true, right?
Can you look at the source code for this function?
So the source code's right here.
Sorry.
So first it stats the source. If it's a directory or it's a subdirect, then if it's a directory, it fails. And then if overwrite is true, it does this exist. If it exists.
Let's remove this, please. I mean, the overwrite is the default, I think, for rename. Typically,
rename doesn't have. We don't have an option for it.
It's the default, so you can turn it off. But I think that most operating systems make it possible to, at least with Linux and Windows, this is configurable in the syscall, and so we should probably just leverage that if we want to. And I'm fairly sure Mac has something. I just don't have the Mac syscalls memorized. But yeah, no, this function seems poorly implemented and unclear. I mean, there's another thing that's unclear about this, which normally you would expect, or no, one could reasonably expect that to the directory and move to create a file with the same name in the target directory. That's not what this thing does. And then if you say overwrite, you could get really nasty results. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to consider a move function that has more, that could, for example, work across file systems, but this doesn't even do that. So
yes, that seems to be the case. Yeah. I thought we had a copy function. Oh, we do have a copy function, which actually opens the source and opens the destination and copies the bytes over.
Yeah, that's true.
But we already have that. So.
Well, I guess my question was that, yeah, like Ryan said that what's in the system on the Dino namespace is usually what you commonly find in the POSIX system, right? And I feel like move is more relevant than rename, and therefore I just wanted to know like if there was a reasoning behind it.
Well, this is called rename.
Naming is rename.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. Despite the Unix command being mv. But
yeah. Okay.
The Cisco is called.
Okay, so I think the conclusion here is that we should remove this move thing and potentially add a overwrite option to Dino rename.
And I would say that potentially in a more longer future, we might want to add a cross-device option to Dino, which makes it more useful and a little bit on some platforms that would actually involve copying and deleting, but so be it.
Well, we have the copy function for that. So if people really want to copy, if people really have like a multi-file system set up, then they would copy and then delete the original file, I think.
Yeah.
It's funny that we like glossed over copy. It's a pretty complicated function actually. I'm looking at the source code of it. Okay, but I think, to make a long story short, because we're out of time here, we're going to remove this move thing. We're going to suggest that people use rename instead. We're going to potentially add this overwrite parameter to dino.rename. But move file system move is out, and maybe we should add some documentation to help people who are searching for this. Okay.
Will there be a recursive option too, or does it that automatically?
Yeah, probably we should have a recursive option since we're adding it to everything else as well. Maybe. I'm not sure. I have to. I would say maybe on that one. There might be some trickiness involved.
So I just checked, and it seems the macOS syscall doesn't actually have a flag for not overwriting, but Linux does.
Yeah, so does Windows, and so does Linux. Oh, and I think Mac actually does have it too. It's just a different syscall. I'll look it up for you.
Oh, I don't know, possible. Apple's like reference library is like terrible.
It's something like rename X and non-POSIX or something. I don't know.
Okay, guys. I think we should call it a day here since we're over time. Thank you for your attention. I feel like we've made some progress on this file system stuff. Hopefully this ends up improving the standard library. I don't feel 100% confident about all of the stuff that we went over, but I think this is definitely a steps in the right direction. And yeah, thanks for looking through this stuff with us. All right. Have a good evening or day wherever you are.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Cheers.